Again, our fear will end. When all is lost, then love remains. We fall, we break, we blame, forsake. Compete, defeat, and hurt and hate. And what will end our misery? What will bring us lasting peace? When we welcome the divine with open hearts and open minds, the truth is there, it's shining bright. When we love again, our fear will end. When all is lost, then love remains. When we love again, our fear will end. When all is lost, then love remains.
And we're going to start with the song, Our World is One World. As a new round of missile attacks hit Ukraine this morning in Kyiv, we gather to remember and to reflect on what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm going to do the land acknowledgement now, and I have a friend that I've done a lot of work with, former principal of a Misquachie school, and he would complain to me about people reading official land acknowledgements, and he said that he wished people would just put it in their own words. And so I have put the land acknowledgement and our welcome into my own words today. So we'll start with the land acknowledgement. Standing on Treaty 6 territory, we recognize and acknowledge that this land on which we stand has been the gathering place for millennia of many Indigenous peoples. As treaty people, we acknowledge, honor, and respect the history, wisdom, knowledge, languages, ceremonies, and culture of the First Nations of this continent, of the Métis peoples, of the Inuit, of all who gathered in this place, the Misquachie. We learn from the first peoples of our connection to the land, of our responsibility to protect and respect Mother Earth. We honor and respect and mourn the ancestors and children buried here, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and men. We acknowledge our need for collective healing. We remember that we are all treaty people and that we are all responsible for each other. Westwood is a welcoming space where we strive to embrace who and what we are, regardless of belief or how ourselves we currently conceive. Westwood is a challenging place where we individually and collectively trace a path that struggles to find truth. Westwood welcomes our elders, middles, muddles, and youths, and a rainbow of peoples and beliefs: theists, non-theists, atheists, paganists, agnostics, gnostics, cynics, and eccentrics. Westwood welcomes people regardless of race, color, creed, class, or breed, gender, ethnicity, unicity, or elasticity. Westwood welcomes how you conceive your growing identity on the continuum of discovery, whichever pronouns you choose to use today or tomorrow, or the direction of your affections, or your color in the rainbow. And with that, we're going to sing Love Will Guide Us, because we need that, and we need some love in this world right now. Stand up if you're willing and able. Harmonize if you want. On the road from Our speaker today is Larisa Hayduk. I've known Larisa for a long time now. She used to work for me as an advisor, and she was always coming up with projects. And they were always great projects. And one of them was to create a experiential learning course in Ukraine, where our students went there and worked at an orphanage. And so this is before the war, the current war, because a lot of the children in this orphanage had lost parents or through the Crimea crisis. So, and I can say that every student who went there, it was a transformative experience. It was absolutely a tremendous thing. And from there, Larisa became the head of the URDC, so the Ukrainian Resource Development Center at MacEwan University. And she has transformed that institution, and they have done so many projects. And she went into overdrive when with the invasion, and Grant MacEwan has brought Ukrainian students. We've developed a course where students who are studying there are working with our students. We've brought professors to speak and to be at Grant MacEwan for a time and so on. And Larisa will flesh all of the things out that she's done, I hope. But with that, I'd like to welcome Larisa to speak to us today.
Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you. I do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to my people. And I have to tell you that preparation for this talk was quite healing, but also emotional. So I will read. Ukraine, humanity in the face of atrocities. Imagine you are sleeping at home and you are being woken by the rockets. Imagine tanks on the streets of your city. Imagine military with machine guns all over your neighborhood. And they are coming from a country that calls you a brotherly nation, or rather one nation. And they are coming from the north, south, and east. What would you do? What would people around you do? You know what Ukrainians did. In the town 120 kilometers where I grew up, young and old took up weapons from the military college, as Ukrainian army didn't have resources to protect the border there. Many were killed, but many continued defending the country, the nation. When Russian forces came closer to the region where my parents live, about 40 kilometers away, invaders were forced to flee and hide in the forests. Local people took over tanks, and you have probably seen the photos of a tractor pulling the Russian tank. A competition among locals was in trend. Who will collect more tanks? Humor helped and still is helping my nation to survive. Ukraine is the size of Alberta, with population of about 42 million people. A Russian invasion displaced 14 million Ukrainians, according to the UN report. Just imagine, more than the entire population of Alberta and Saskatchewan forced to flee. The world of so many of us crashed. The world has changed to before and after February 24th. I remember being terrified for weeks. We knew it was coming, but we didn't want to believe it. That day blurred in my mind. What did I do? When the pain was so unbearable, I went to volunteer to sort out items for the plane to be sent to Ukraine. I wanted the physical pain to be stronger than psychological. The communities in Edmonton, Canada, and Ukraine self-organized within weeks, if not days. Donations were being accepted, parcels sent, fundraising underway. From Edmonton alone, 2 planes with aid were filled and sent, in addition to the numerous cargo shipments. Disinformation campaign was strong, and it was critical for us to talk, develop resources, organize rallies, speak for Ukraine. In Ukraine, my mom and dad were making camouflage nets. I think the grassroots social networks in Ukraine will be studied for years to come. In my small town in central Ukraine, about 100 internally displaced people arrived. Young and old came together to provide food and all necessities. Many of those people have been displaced the second time, the first time being in 2014, when the first Russian invasion took place. As Rob has mentioned, I work at UIDC, Ukrainian Resource and Development Center. We work closely with Ukrainian Canadian community here in Canada, and we have partners, universities in Ukraine, and we are project oriented. We have numerous, I will just mention some of them. So at UIDC at MacEwan, I had to reevaluate our work. Some of the projects were put on hold, new introduced, and some continued, although revised. One of them is the Canada-Ukraine Model UN project launched in 2019. For 10 months, we plan to bring the first delegation of Ukrainian students and faculty to the International Model UN conference in New York in late March 2022. Research papers submitted, negotiations practiced, tickets and hotel booked. Related, we also ran an online joint political science course between MacEwan and 2 Ukrainian universities. Everything stopped on February 24th. The trip was canceled. Students fled to safer places. University canceled classes. It is hard to teach during air raids, bombing and shelling. But classes stopped for 2 weeks only. Education of children and youth had to go on. It became a priority for the Ukrainian government and educators. And after some deliberations, our colleagues decided to try and bring the delegation to New York after all. University administration saw it as their responsibility to bring the Ukrainian voice to the 4,000 student conference from around the world. There were panel discussions, one-on-one conversations, professor keynote talk, and media conference. These young people took it upon themselves to bring the message of truth when the war was just beginning and disinformation campaign was so strong. One of the students had to travel through Russian checkpoints from eastern Ukraine. It took her 3 days to get through Ukraine to Poland. Another student who left Crimea in 2014 had to take the first train from Kyiv to Western Ukraine when bombs and missiles were in the sky above Kyiv. The trains were full, people terrified, fleeing with their children and pets. Russian forces were already near Kyiv. Thanks to our project, Katerina was to volunteer at the New York conference, and the conference organizers brought her to the US much earlier. She had nowhere to go, nowhere to run, as her family is still in Crimea. So many times I have been trying to imagine myself there. What would I have done? Often I think it might have been easier for me to be there in Ukraine, to live this through with my people. Every day, Ukraine is losing many of its best. Ukrainian army consists of people from various spheres of life who have gone to defend their country: journalists, writers, lawyers, professors, economists, engineers. This war is costing us our future. What we lose in this war will create a huge gap that will take a long time to fill. My best friend's 2 sons are in the military. One of them lives in Irpin, near Kyiv. Do you remember Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel? I was in New York with the Ukrainian delegation when Helena, professor from the Ukrainian Catholic University, came to my room crying and telling me the horrors of Russian atrocities that were discovered that day. 6 months later, during a massive missile attack, Helena and her colleague were giving a talk to the Japanese students from a shelter in Lviv. And Helena mentioned this to me with a joke as everyday thing when we discussed our projects with her over the phone. Air raids never stopped them from doing their work. My world blurred and stayed like that for many months. I was lucky to have people around me who understood, supported, and did their part and much more to support Ukraine and Ukrainians. At MacEwan, our Ukraine team, we call it a Ukraine team, came up with ideas and introduced them right away. Information literacy, we developed resources, we hold campus forums to support our students and staff. MacEwan sponsored 8 students from our partner universities, as Rob mentioned already. We have been working with those students and the Ukrainian Student Club to tell about Ukraine and the war. We organized poster and art exhibits, talks, and a cooking session. We raised the Ukrainian flag at MacEwan and organized a walk to the legislature. One of the major UIDC initiatives this year was the free English classes for new Ukrainians. My good friend from Odessa has a daughter who was pregnant when the invasion started. She climbed in the bathtub during air raids every day, many times a day. She gave birth to a healthy boy in Odessa in July. What does it mean to have a baby during a war? What does it mean to run from shelling holding your newborn baby? What does it mean to nurse your child during air raids? Her husband is from Mariupol. His brother was killed there. The family buried him twice. First, in the yard near the house, as it was the only option, and second time, to identify for the death certificate and to bury at the cemetery. What does it mean to bury your child twice? Mariupol, the ghost city. The blossoming city that was revived after 2014. The city on the Azov Sea, leveled to the ground. They said they were saving Russian-speaking people. Mariupol's population was almost 45% ethnic Russians. Those who survived are switching to Ukrainian now. A story about a boy catching a bus with his mom broke my heart. He heard Russian when stepped on the bus, turned around and cried, "Are there Russians here, Mom?" People on the bus started switching to Ukrainian. Russian is now the language of oppression, the language of violence. They said they were saving Russian-speaking people from Nazis. They're still looking for Nazis. When they're looting, torturing innocent people, wiping out people and the culture, who are the Nazis? Lies, constant lies, arrogant lies, hypocrisy of Russian government officials, diplomats, media persons is hard to comprehend for a normal ethical person. You cannot imagine the magnitude of it. Many tyrants broadcast big lies to justify their crimes and impose their will through terror. Ukrainians have shown that lies can be exposed and terror can be resisted. Their struggle is far from over, but the example in 2022 was unparalleled. What is also important to highlight is that this is not a new fight. This is an imperial 300 years old struggle of Ukrainian people to save the language, culture, and nation. Putin is the latest in the long line of Russian rulers who have sought to eradicate Ukrainian identity and wipe Ukraine off the European map. In July 2021, Putin published a 5,000-word essay that many likened to a declaration of war on Ukrainian statehood. During the first 6 months of invasion, Russia's genocidal intentions have become even more explicit. Regime officials have routinely questioned Ukraine's continued existence, while debates over the desirability of a genocide in Ukraine has become an everyday feature of Kremlin-controlled Russian TV. Meanwhile, media has helpfully clarified that Putin's promised denazification actually means de-Ukrainization of Ukraine. How to annex another country's territory? This is how Russia does it. Send bombs, missiles, and tanks, kill, occupy, terrorize, displace, rape, bring Russian teachers, change curriculum, terrorize, put its people in charge, control, bring Russian people to replace Ukrainian population, deny language and culture, burn books, steal artifacts. Such propaganda machine will change attitudes of people in one generation. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Education, Russia's attacks on Ukraine have damaged over 2,000 educational institutions and destroyed about 300. Numerous university students, faculty, and staff have been displaced or have joined the war effort. The survival of many Ukrainian universities is now at stake due to lack of funding, displaced staff and students, and destroyed infrastructure. But in about 6 months of the war, my perception started to change. I started seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. I started moving to more positive outlook and see inspiration in Ukrainian people, my family, my friends, and colleagues. What has changed? Everyone knows where Ukraine is now. Everyone knows that Ukraine is not Russia. The war brought the nation together and forced people to shift their perspectives. Ukraine showed that it is possible to stand up to a bully, and the world will support you. Nobody expected such outstanding response and support from around the world, European Union, and NATO. Ukraine has, is, and will change the world. Ukraine has turned out to be a remarkable, stable social construct. The Russian invaders bombed refineries, but the Ukrainians learned how to quickly deliver fuel from abroad. Russians are destroying electricity and communication, but Ukrainians are fixing everything and using generations in Starlinks. Trains keep running, evacuating and transporting people across the country. Post office, government services, banking system never stopped working. Educators from kindergarten to university have been doing heroic work. Have you seen a video of a teacher conducting a lesson in front of a store? This is where she could find Wi-Fi. As of November 2022, 50% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been destroyed by Russian attacks. Attacks aimed at the destruction of critical infrastructure, denying people access to electricity, water, heat, internet. Ukrainian engineers have been fighting to maintain the power grid and bring light to homes, hospitals, schools, and businesses. I have been thinking about the generation that is fighting this war. I changed my view from a generation marked by trauma to a generation that inspires the world and builds the nation. This is the generation that has to win, and this is an existential war for Ukraine. It is not a lost generation, but rather a generation that will be known to have saved Ukraine. Inspirational, courageous, creative, strong, ready to fight against oppression. 2022 was a horrible year, but it was also a year of hope. Ukrainian resistance rewrote the story for many of us. It empowered us. What is important to me is that Ukrainians define not only political, but ethical map. Humanity and dignity guide the nation. 2022 was a year of miracles. Ukraine is still standing. Ukraine will win. What you can do? Help us tell the true stories. Read, watch reliable sources, educate yourself, and speak up if you hear injustices and lies. Pay attention to vocabulary. It is Ukraine, not the Ukraine. It is Kyiv, not Kiev. It is war, not crisis or conflict. Join Ukrainian community for rallies and various events. Volunteer for an organization that supports newcomers in Edmonton. Invite new Ukrainians to events. Show them the best of Edmonton. We have about 7,000 new people from Ukraine in Edmonton, about 20 in Alberta, 20,000. English language classes are still in demand. You could help there. Help us speak up for Ukraine. Send a message to the government, to your MP. If Ukraine fails, democracy and freedom fails, and we cannot allow that. I hope for global solidarity movement that would foster the values of human life, democratic values, social justice. It is all about humanity. As the 2022 Nobel Prize in Peace recipient Alexandra Matveychuk said, you don't have to be a Ukrainian to support Ukraine. You have to be a human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Larisa. And one of the things that I found very powerful is that it's the small and the large at the same time. And with that, I'd like to invite people to bring up their candles of celebration and concern. And I would light one first. I'm going to take advantage of this situation. This is for all the people in Ukraine struggling. I can't even imagine, but it also reminds me of all the struggles of, well, my ancestors. My Guido, who after World War I was involved in the Ukrainian national movement and had to flee. My Baba, who was denied, she was a teacher and could not teach because she was teaching in Ukrainian, and that was denied. So I mean that all of these histories return, and so obviously it's a candle of concern, but also a a candle of celebration of the human spirit that keeps coming on. Anyone? Okay, thank you. I didn't know how to do it. Thank you. And her candle of concern is that I'm doing the candles of concern. No? Okay. Anyone else? No? There's usually around 32 people coming up here and we only have like 10 in the room. Okay.
Yeah, I too feel very moved by this talk and appreciate it very much. Because my father's parents came over separately from Ukraine, and then 20 years after they came over, they stopped getting letters because of the oppression by Stalin that caused their starvation. And so, yeah, I think this war is a very important one, and my heart goes out to all the people who are suffering. And I light a candle of hope that the war may be resolved sooner rather than later. I'd like to light one more candle if I may. I just also feel a lot of concern for the people who do not have homes or houses to live in Edmonton. Seems to be a growing crisis. And so I would like to light a candle of concern and hope that that crisis may also be resolved.
Okay, well, I will light a collective one for all the concerns in our hearts and all the things that are left unsaid that are worthy of celebration. And join us with the affirmation. May the light of these candles inspire us to use our power to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to serve the spirit of truth and loving affection and trusting hope. Larisa, I need you up here again, because Larissa's going to help me. I have two stories that I'm going to add to this. When I was a kid, so this was during the Soviet era, I was at a funeral, and afterwards at the reception, the priest pulled out a letter, and it was around this time of year, and he read the story about how they weren't allowed to have the Christmas celebrations, and how the people gathered in the forest to have this celebration in spite of the Soviet authorities. And it just seemed like, you know, another world, another hard to conceive. And the Ukrainian national poet, Taras Shevchenko, wrote some words a long time ago And Larissa's going to read them, and then I will read the translation. Oh, I printed it up for you if you want. Okay.
Тарас Шевченко. Мій Боже милий, знову лихо. Було так лихо, було тихо. Ми заходились розкувать своїм невольникам кайдани. Аж гульк, і знову потекла мужицька кров. Кати вінчані, мов пси голодні за маслак, гризуться знову.
And this translation was by Gabriel Rosenstock. Calamity once more. Dear God, calamity once more. So peaceful and serene it was. The chains that bound our people in slavery were straining to break when suddenly, now our people's blood is flowing again. Like ravenous dogs to butter, royal thugs are at our throats once more. You can sit, or the last song we're doing is appropriate. It's also Martin Luther King's birthday right now. And this is a song that was very much associated with the civil rights movement. Well, it was the anthem of the civil rights movement. And then, of course, it has spread around the world for all struggles against oppression. And I think it is completely appropriate for us to do it today. We shall overcome. And this is right now it's an 11-string guitar. Because I was tuning it and it broke. And I thought I would rush out and get some new strings, and I thought, no, it's more appropriate to go on with something wrong and make it work. So, as Pete Seeger would say, there's a moral here somewhere. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Stand up and harmonize. We shall overcome. Just a minute before we get to this. This is a song This is a verse that they sang in Montgomery, Alabama. And it's very appropriate right now in Kyiv as well. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I know that I do believe we shall live in peace someday. And with that, the service is ended. And thank you again to Larisa for joining us and for sharing. It was very, very meaningful. Thank you.